All right, we're live.
Hello, world.
Hey, welcome back. All right. So today we're gonna take a detour away from woman in Genesis and the gospel according to Genesis 3:16 that I was working on a couple of weeks ago. We're gonna put that on hold for a minute. I'm gonna write something up, send it to these two so that they can come back at me well researched and homeworked. But I do think this story that I want to look at today um, is kind of ties into that maybe a little bit. So we're going to go to Genesis 30. I want to read the first couple verses of Genesis 30, and then we'll look at 29 for context, and then just see where the discussion goes. So.
All right. And I just want everybody to know I'm coming in really fresh. I haven't touched this at all.
Yeah.
And this is the Showbread Podcast.
Welcome to the Showbread. Roles of women in the biblical narrative.
Okay. All right.
About Palestine. So there we go.
Okay.
All right. Does someone want to read? Why don't we read 31 through just 1 through 6. We'll get started there.
Chapter 30, verse 1 through 6.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I can read it.
All right.
All right. When Rachel saw that she could not give Jacob children, she became jealous of her sister. She said to Jacob, "Give me children or I'll die." Jacob became furious with Rachel and exclaimed, "Am I in the place of God who has kept you from having children?" She replied, "Here is my servant, Bilhah." Oh boy, we have some stuff to talk about. Okay, have sexual relations with her so that she can bear children for me and I can have a family through her. So Rachel gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob had marital relations with her. Bilhah became pregnant and gave Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, "God has vindicated me. He has responded to my prayer and given me a son." That is why she named him Dan.
Okay.
Wow. And then she became pregnant again and gave Jacob another son. And then Rachel said, "I have fought a desperate struggle with my sister, but I have won." So she named him Naphtali.
Okay.
Woo! Okay, let's see. Where do you want to take us? Because I got a lot to say.
Okay, so let's so what if we've never read this before, what is the question that you should have in your mind? Like if you're just reading this, what's the major question do you think that comes to mind?
Questions or what just comes to mind generally?
Yeah, both.
Okay, well, reading it, I see Leah there, as a woman who was seeking for something. So
that this is Rachel.
I'm sorry, Rachel. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, not Leah. Leah was the one that was having the child. Sorry, Rachel. I see Rachel as a woman who had, knowing the context of the story, she was very beautiful. She was the one that Jacob loved, right? Really wanted to get married to, but there was a switchover sometimes in the dark, right? And he had to marry the sister. And the sister was giving birth to children and she never had children. So she was seeking for something, and she was seeking for children. She wanted to have children there, and then she began to do different things to make that happen. A servant and all that. But I actually wrote something on this particular passage some years ago. that I was studying the meaning of the names of the children, and they all pointed to what she was trying to do. So yeah, she really wanted the attention, because she wanted the attention of her husband, and she wanted the children, and then each of the names of the children meant something. And the one she finally settled on, which was Judah, like the praise,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
is how this tracks. And I would say is you read this and you're like, what is up? What the heck is going on here? Right? Like, that's the question. Like, why is this woman so crazy?
Hi, Anthony. Anthony is in South Sudan.
Hey,
Hello, Anthony.
Yeah, he's actually a pastor there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the question is, like, why is she so mad at her sister? Like, why is she so jealous of her sister? And why does she want children so bad? Right? Is kind of a question that is going on here. So let's read Genesis 29, because that's the what happened before, right? But if you just read this, you got a woman who is so crazy for children, she's like, sleep with this other woman.
Yeah.
Right. And make her give me the child that she bears. Right. So that's a red flag, right? This does not seem like this is a healthy family dynamic, right? Like, right away, we're like, this feels kind of weird. You have any comments?
Well, let's read it, and then I'll share.
Okay. All right.
Because the context is really important here.
Yeah. Okay. So Genesis 29. Let's just read all of 29.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Pastor Lon, do you want to read it, or would?
Oh, okay. 29. Let me read it. Just go back one. Starting from verse 1.
Yeah, because I want to get the whole.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then Jacob continued on his journey and came to the land of the eastern peoples. There he saw a well in the open country with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it, because the flocks were watered from that well. The stone over the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone away from the well's mouth and water the sheep. Then they will return the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob asked the shepherds, "My brothers, where are you from?" "We're from Haran," they replied. And he said to them, "Do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson?" "Yes, we know him," they answered. Then Jacob asked them, "Is he well?" "Yes, he is," they said. "And here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep." "Look," he said, "the sun is still high. It's not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to pasture." "We can't," they replied, "until all the flocks are gathered and the stones have been rolled away from the mouth of the well. Then we will water the sheep." While he was still talking with them, Rachel came in with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherd. When Jacob saw Rachel's daughter of his uncle Laban, that's cool. She was a shepherd. She was a shepherd.
Yeah. like David, right?
Yeah.
Like David. That means she had strength like David. She had wisdom like. All right, let me be quiet.
Yes. I know you like that. It's very good.
Yeah.
When Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of his uncle Laban, and Laban's sheep, he went over and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. That's fast.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
surprised you didn't punch him in the face or something. But
This might have been the kiss on the cheek.
Okay.
He started making out with her. I don't think
He had told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and son of Rebekah. So she ran and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him. Okay, now we have the kiss in context. And brought him to his home. There was a lot of kissing, It was just, just
Yeah.
greeting, And then Jacob told him all these things. Then Laban said to him, "You are my own flesh and blood." After Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, "Just because you are a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be." Now, Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older one was Leah, and the name of the younger one was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was very beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, "I'll work for 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel." Laban said, "It's better that I give her to you than to some other man. Stay here with me." So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, and they seemed like only a few days to him because he was in love.
I don't know. 7 years is a long time.
Yeah. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife. My time is complete. I want to make love to her now." I've been waiting for 7 years from the first kiss.
Yeah, exactly.
So Laban brought together all the people of the place and gave a feast. But when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob. And Jacob made love to her. So Jacob didn't open his eyes. He didn't see anything. And Laban gave his servant Zilpah to his daughter as an attendant. When morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, "What is this that you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived?" Can you imagine how Leah must have felt?
I know. I think about that so much. Oh my goodness, to have had, okay. Well, we could talk about
They had
that.
an infirmity in the eye or something, and then now she was switched over. They had to smuggle her into marriage, and the man said, "What is this?
Yeah,
That's tough."
and to have lost a very sacred part of you, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then to have that person be like, "I don't want you.
I don't want you.
I don't want you. I want her."
Yeah.
Oof.
So basically, Laban replied, "It's not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one. Finish this daughter's bridal week. That's another 7 years. Then we will give you the younger one also in return for another 7 years of work." And Jacob did so. He finished the week with Leah, and then Laban gave him his daughter, Rachel, to be his wife. Laban gave his servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her attendant. Jacob made love to Rachel also, and his love for Rachel was greater than his love for Leah. And he worked for Laban another 7 years. So Leah, rejected, now began to try to catch the attention of her husband. Mm-hmm. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, I just love God. He loves those who are, below. He sees and he focuses on them. Mm-hmm. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive. But Rachel remained childless. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben. For she said, "It is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now." He conceived again. And when she gave birth to a son, she said, "Because the Lord has heard that I am not loved, she gave me this one also." And she named him Simeon.
Can you just imagine that? Can you just imagine that feeling and carrying that feeling around while you are pregnant,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the child can feel all that. We know that today,
Yeah.
you know, through studies that the woman's feelings are transferred. Anyway, okay, let's go.
And Reuben means see a son. Simon means hear, you know, like see. She's trying to get the attention of her husband, see, hear. And then again, she conceived and she gave birth to a son. She said, now at last, my husband will become attracted to me because I have borne him 3 sons. So he was named Levi, which means attached. You know, she conceived again. And when she gave birth to a son, she said, this time I will turn away from my husband. I will praise the Lord. So she named him Judah, which means praise. Then she stopped having children.
Woo! I had no idea we were going to talk about this today.
Super loaded. Right.
All right. So, okay, Scott, what are you thinking? Like, why did you pick this?
Well, so the premise we were talking about in Genesis 3:16 is your desire will be for the man, right? And the question is, what man is that, right? Because in the next chapter, the man, I have acquired a man, is her son, right? And so your desire will be for the man, he will rule over you. And so the question I have is, do we see this precedent play out, that the desire is for the man, a husband or offspring? And do we see the man ruling over her or over that desire, right? So, of course, I immediately think of this story because, you know, as we get into Genesis 30, Jacob's role in this is very, in some sense, very passive, right? The women are driving this story. They're the ones driving the story.
I don't know if he's passive though, because he's the one driving the lust, the love, the way he looks at the women, the way he. So yes, they're not talking about
how do the women look at him is also a big part of the story.
Oh yeah. No. All of that is there, but I don't think he's so passive. I mean, I think that we can
I think there are 2 desires mentioned in there. I mean, we could say 3 set of desires mentioned in there. So the first desire that we see there was the desire of Jacob to have Rachel from the moment he set eyes on her. That's the first desire. Second desire was the desire of Laban to marry his daughter off, especially the first one that seemed to have a problem.
Right.
And then the third one.
And we also have to wonder, did Laban really want to marry? Was his desire to marry his daughter, or was his desire to basically keep Jacob working for him?
Yeah.
And what does Jacob have that Laban knows he has?
Well, definitely he has the blessing, you know.
Right.
And 2, he also has the ability to labor and work for him, as a shepherd. Yeah. But so he had mixed desires, So also wanted his daughter to get married to a relative or something like that. And then the other desire, I'll categorize both of them together, is the desires of the women there, which is those are actually the strongest the strongest desires that the author really spent much time talking about. It was first of all Rachel's desire to be accepted by her husband.
Leah's desire.
Leah's desire, to be accepted by her husband. And as a result of that, she kept on having children. And then the other one, in the first one we read, was now Rachel's desire also to have a child and meet up with her sister. So it was a combination of desires ongoing there. But I think the woman's desire are the strongest expressed there.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And okay, so there is, I mean, if we look at the two sisters together before Daddy made the switch, what was their relationship like? Right? Maybe it was, Leah was the older sister. She was probably the one, that was kind of somewhat motherly to Rachel, and taught her things. Right? That's what the older siblings do. They teach you. And I'm not. And this is just from customs, right? And from that day. And sometimes the younger sibling, looks up to the older sister. Sometimes the younger person might think, wow, they do this better than me. And so there might be some kind of jealousy there or whatever. And Rachel must have known that she looked good and more pleasing, because the older sister wasn't married yet, right? So maybe, subconsciously that's something that she knew. And so maybe that gave her a little bit of confidence, like, maybe, I'm just saying.
Are you talking about Rachel? That Rachel had confidence?
Rachel.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah. Because she was like the beautiful one.
Mm-hmm.
The older sister had some problem, I don't know, with her eye, or some people say tender eye, some people say
Which means that when men would come and Laban would hope that he could marry his daughter off, men would look at Leah and be like, no, but this one. So maybe it wasn't the first time, right? And so, Laban would. So anyway, there's definitely, before this happens, there was already a relationship that was established between Leah and Rachel. Some kind of a relationship that was established, right? And for Leah to feel unloved, I don't think it was just because of Jacob. I think that there was also something that she brought into the marriage, right? That there was something there, an insecurity. There was something, right? And if she, who knows, did she flaunt this? Or the fact that, wow, I have the man that that my sister desired, and he desires her, and now I have him. Who knows? I don't know.
Let me read. There was I said I wrote something on this. Let me just read just a quick paragraph. So I started by saying, you are in a phony marriage. Your dad's crazy idea. Your husband was tricked into marrying you because your dad felt your chance of ever getting married was nil. Your husband is in love with another woman. Not just another woman, but your younger sister, who was a stunner. That same younger sister, everyone had always complimented on her beauty since you were kids.
Yeah.
With only a slight nod at you for being present. It seems as if she loved her husband who didn't care for her a bit. She fulfilled conjugal obligations. She fulfilled marital conjugal obligation. One wonders how painful this must have been, with her full knowledge that her passionate husband, who could serve 14 years for another woman, didn't want her at all.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That there's a lot of pain there. There's a lot of pain there that she, had before coming in. And yeah, I think and the fact that God saw, where is it that God saw that she was unloved? When the Lord saw that she was unloved, that for God to notice that you are unloved, it's not just, oh, Jacob doesn't love her. Maybe it was also Rachel. Everybody looked at her like, what? Or not, I shouldn't say everybody, but to have Rachel, I don't think it's just Jacob. I think it was Rachel also that didn't love her.
Yeah, it was like an imposter, imposter sin. She was like, she's just there. Nobody really wanted her. Dad wanted to get rid of her. Her husband didn't want her, and her sister felt that she was a competition.
Yes,
It was really bad. Yeah.
And then when you start having kids, and kids see this, when I was in Rwanda, and I was having conversations with some women who were either second wives or third wives or children of the second wife. And the first wife would be more loved than the second wife. There were very, very painful things that make you feel like you are unloved, right? And so, and here is Leah, the first wife, and being unloved. And there, how do you say it? Traditionally, the first wife, you have a little bit more honor. And more, you're dignified in a certain way, as the first wife. And there were things that she wasn't receiving as a first wife from her husband. And then all of a sudden, a week later, there's a second wife, and it's the one that is more favored. So there's a lot there. I mean, I would love to bring in a therapist and say, yeah, break this down for us. Let us know what you think about this. What kinds of things are going on here?
Yeah. It's the whole thing is fascinating. So a couple of things that really strike me is how Laban speaks to Jacob is really interesting to me. Because it's Genesis 3 language. And Laban said to him, surely you are my bone and my flesh. And stayed with him a month. And he stayed with him a month. So that's what Adam said to Eve. So that's interesting to me. Like, why use that language, right? Why is the scripture using that language? So that's a question I have.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The other question is, why did, now maybe she couldn't, but it doesn't seem like Rachel, it seems like Rachel could have said, I don't want to marry him, right? He's already married to my sister. It happened really quick, right? So it was like they did the switch, Rachel was there for the switch. So she had to sit she's ready to get married, and she's sitting in the background knowing this is happening the whole night, right? So it's not easy for her either, right? Like, she had expected to be married to this man after 7 years. She was waiting 7 years probably too. We kind of get the sense she did maybe wanted to marry him. Maybe she doesn't, though. I mean, like, I don't know that we see a huge desire of Rachel for Jacob, right? We see a desire that Jacob has for Rachel, but if she was forced to marry him after and by the way, forced to marry him a week after he married.
That's 7 years.
No. A week after.
No, a week is 7 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was, just like the week in Daniel, it was 7 years. After he worked another 7 years, that's what is called a week in that context.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
After your week, so it means after your 7 years.
Yeah, after your 7 years.
Oh, okay. Okay. So he had to wait then.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they got. I was reading that. I'd never noticed that before. I was like, oh my God, he married her like a week later and then stuck around for 7 years.
No, it's a week. Like, they call it a week, like the Sabbath week. Like every 7 years is called a week. Like if you read the book of Daniel, it said, this number of weeks will happen, but it was talking about 7 years week. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so my translation, I'll have to go back to the Hebrew because it says
so it was the first 7 years. It was supposed to be for Rachel, but then there was a switch. So he had to work another 7 years to get Rachel, and then he had to work another 7 years. So he did 3 weeks of work, but 2 weeks. That's it's that symbolic week there.
It does say period of 7 days or 7 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I've got in my Hebrew.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he worked 21
years. Yeah, 14 years for the woman, and then another 7 years, before he could go again, back.
Wow. Okay. All right. So that's okay. All right, and here's something else. Rachel did to her servant what her father did to Leah. Right? She gave Jacob her servant. And Jacob could have said no, right? Just like Rachel could have said no, right? And it's almost like the kids are being used as tools instead of kids, like kids.
What's
guys, we're happy you're here.
What's my name, Mom? God hears me because your dad hated me and God finally noticed it. And so I named you God Hears Me.
And these kids, they do not ask to come into this world. As far as we know, kids don't ask to come into the world, right?
I don't remember asking to come into the world.
I mean, who knows? Who knows?
I don't have that memory, so I would agree with you.
So, which means that we bring kids into the world, and those kids had to carry the parents' pain with them throughout their entire life.
Oh yeah, and if you notice, if you go on,
they're named after the pain.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And if you go on in the story, you know that these are the 12 tribes of Israel being born, and you see all the things that happened with Joseph. Joseph was the child of Rachel, and the brothers betraying Joseph, and all that started before they were even born.
Right. Yes.
So so they were being born into dysfunction, right?
Yes.
And so they carried that dysfunction forward. Later you will see what happened to all those children. But they were the 12 tribes of Israel, which also tells us that God brings out his purpose out of dysfunction. He needed the 12 tribes of Israel, but he brought them from this situation of these two women. That's how the 12 tribes of Israel were born. So God brings purpose out of pain, right? But the pain, was not supposed to be, but God still brought something out of it. But this whole situation of Jacob, Leah, and Rachel was something that went on to the next generation too.
Yeah. They had no chance to have their own identity.
And they were born into rivalry.
Yeah, they were born into rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
And like think about, so all of Leah's children are being taught your dad doesn't love your mother. Right? Because your grandfather didn't love your mother either. So these are children of a double rejection.
Yeah.
Right? So when you get to let's kill our brother Joseph, who's the son of the rival mother, you start to understand that makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense that of course their names literally were a rivalry.
Yeah.
This is like, I mean, this is Palestine. I mean, like, because right, where Europe basically decides what's going to happen to two people groups without thinking through it for its own probably selfish desire, and creates a situation, right, that now these two sisters have to deal with, so they are put in a situation that is not fair, and to some extent Jacob too, right, who also came from an unfavored status in his own family.
Yep.
So we're talking about rejection is like all over the place.
Yep.
This is all over the place here.
And then he transferred the same thing of favoring Rachel over Leah to favoring Joseph over all the other children, because she was born from Leah. So which created a rivalry, transgenerational rivalry. So yeah.
Well, and there's also the element of power in this, right? Because Laban had power to make a decision and to put all three of them, Jacob, Leah, and Rachel, under his power.
Right.
Nobody
opposes it. And nobody opposes it. Nobody even stands up to it at all. They just go with it.
Right.
Until 21 years later. Until later. Years later.
Yeah, later. Yep.
When they rebel against it and left, and he sent somebody to go search after them. And
and then that power, and and we think about where Jacob came from, and that's another story as well, but Jacob's father is Isaac, and then and
he also loved Esau more than Jacob.
Yes. Yes. And so, there's this dysfunction that continues, which I believe we still see it today. We still see it today. We see the power, the dysfunction, more than love, more than, I'm feeling jealous, and I'm gonna check my jealousy, and I am gonna choose a different way. I am not gonna allow this jealousy to grow in me and become a monster. And so it continues. So and oh yeah, oof,
I think you were linking it up with Genesis 3. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. Like you were going.
Yeah, ask the question again.
Well, I just think so. It gets into, I think that in this passage you most clearly see these two desires, right, of the woman, right, for the man, right? One has a desire for the man, the husband, right, and wants children in the hopes that she will be loved by her husband, right? And the other has the love of her husband, but desires to have children. So it's interesting. You kind of, we're like, which one is it? I mean, and actually in this story, we see it's both. It's both, right? But I also do see like why this inordinate, like Leah, I understand. Rachel is a little trickier for me, right? That she is so desperate for children that she's willing to have her husband sleep with her servant. Like it's bad enough, right? Like that's how it's like, why, where is that desire coming from? You know?
That was what Sarah did too. Remember Sarah and
Sarah did the same thing, right?
Because in that context, the context that they were in, all of the validations of a woman, that a woman is a woman. It's not that she bore a child, but that she bore a son.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the major validation of a woman then, based on those days. So I think there are some things to unpack in that too. Was
Yeah.
that she had a son? You understand? And when people don't have children in those days, it was, and in some places right now too, some cultures are still like that. If they don't have children, it's like the worst thing. You remember Hannah when
Mm-hmm.
the other wife kept on having children, how she went to pray and did all that, like, I got to have children every year, because having a child validates our womanhood based on then, the way things were then.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, there's that, and there is also a disrespect, I think, towards women, right? Because Laban gave Bilhah to Rachel as a wedding gift.
Yeah. Well, there's a
Right?
disrespect towards women, and what he's
That was
not
slavery.
exactly above board when it comes to Jacob either.
Wait a minute. Wait, I didn't hear.
What I'm saying, that was slavery. Like that one was slavery, which they did to men and to women.
Mm-hmm.
They saw them as properties.
Yes, exactly. And so it wasn't just the men that disrespected women. Women disrespected each other based on how they saw themselves.
Yeah.
I am Laban's daughter. This is my servant. I am going, and because she's a female and she has female organs, this is how I'm going to use you.
Yeah.
Right. And so there is this disrespect of women all across the board, and we justify it. They justified it back then. And, we read it today and we justify it today rather than look at what does that really look like?
Yeah.
What does that really look like? What are we doing? When do we stop the dysfunction?
Yeah, I think it was a disrespect of humans, of human life generally. There was a time I was studying Hagar. Hagar was the woman that Sarah gave to Abraham and said, marry my slave. When they first introduced her in the Bible, they introduced her after mentioning animals. So they said Abraham had cattle, horses, whatever. They mentioned all the animals, and then they now went to slaves last.
Yes.
So you see how completely dehumanized those people were. And Hagar was one of those people. That was why when she got attention for the first time, and Sarah noticed that, and she became Abraham's, give birth, she began to display some things to Sarah, and then she was now demoted again. And guess when God met her, she said, "The Lord that sees me, that is the Lord that sees me." Like she had been seeking to be seen, to be seen as something more than just a slave, and it was only God that saw her as that. Everybody saw her as a tool to be used.
Yes. Yeah. And for Sarah, she's like, okay, now that I'm seen and now that I have what was promised to me, and now Hagar, you're
not needed anymore.
You're not needed, right? And so she's disregarded.
Yeah.
And I don't talk about this often, but I think it's important. Since we're trying to humanize people here, I am also the firstborn of a father whose family said, no, you are not my son's child. And they totally disregarded my mom. Now I have reconnected with my, years ago, I reconnected with my family. And so there's a lot of healing, there's a lot of love and acceptance and all that. But, being the firstborn, like Leah, like Ishmael, and seeing the love for those that were wanted, right? Because the other ones are wanted. is very, very painful. It's painful. And that is something that you have to work through, because you see that your whole life. You see it your whole life. That is your place, right? And that was orchestrated. All of that was orchestrated in the name of God, or, this is, thank God, now I'm loved. Thank God, now I have my child. Now I can send you away. All this. And all of that, I think it's really important to talk about. It's really because we're still doing that. We still do that today, and we justify it.
Yeah, it's almost like she's using the Lord's name in vain, right? Like the way she is thinking about this.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, Pastor Lon, you're hinting at it as we trace these names. So I think next week, let's do that. Let's look at, so there's a time where there's something that happens, and then the names change.
Name change, yeah.
Yeah, the names change from a less bitter place to a different place.
Different place.
And there's a story there that's going on that's really powerful. Yeah, so maybe we can look at that. And actually, now I'm realizing this Oxus story in Joshua 15 and Judges 1. And you think about, why is that in both those books, right? And I'm thinking now, as we are talking, it might be deeply connected actually to this story and this issue that we're talking about, and how the women are disrespected, how the daughters are disrespected. Like, so maybe next week we could spend another year on here. I just want to tap into it when we, but maybe what we can do next week is look at, where Pastor Lon was going. I think I know where he's going, where we look at the stories of these names and the stories of these two sisters.
Yeah.
Which is very similar to the story of Jacob and Esau, actually. Yeah. Because this is what's so interesting about the scripture is there's these stories of betrayal, of rejection, and jealousy, but then there's also these stories of redemption and reconciliation that happen within these families. And it's almost like scripture is saying, hey, we know this is going to happen.
Yeah.
We know this is going to happen. This happened to my people. This happened to the family I've focused on. It's probably happening in your family, and there is a way back from it. Yeah. Right. And, which is what I think the scriptures are about. So next week, let's finish this. And if we have time, we'll jump into the Oxus story and think about it in relationship with this story, the story of daughters here.
Yeah. I like what you wrote, Pastor Lon, that you were right on. You were able, you tapped into the women's side of this. So. All right. Okay. Good conversation. Woo!
All right. We made it.
All right.
See you, everybody. See you next week.
See you next week. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.